Hello and welcome to Journeys in Faith with Anne DeSantis here on the Anne DeSantis YouTube channel. I have a wonderful guest for all of you this evening. I have Dr. John Sottosanti. And John, it's just wonderful to have you on the show. I'm excited for people to hear your faith journey. You have certainly been through so many trials, and yet here you are to tell your story and to encourage all of us in our faith. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And thank you, Anne, for the invitation.
Yes. Now, you wrote a book, and the name of the book is Moral Adhesions.
Mortal
Mortal
adhesion.
Adhesions, a surgeon's battle with the seven deadly sins to find faith. And boy, I know that in reading a little bit about your journey, I just can't even begin to put into words some of the things that you've been through. I know you're going to take us on that path of what how you got to where you are right now. So please do share.
Well, thank you. I started off as a youngster in Connecticut, and my dad was an Italian immigrant. And he said to me, John, it's very difficult here in this country to be accepted. And he said, what you need to do is you need to study hard, become a doctor, and then make lots of money, and then you'll be respected. And so that's what I tried to do. And what I did was work really hard, got all the degrees, and then I graduated and I became a surgeon in oral surgery. And I opened up an office and I built it up into, I almost call it an empire. We had 52 people working in the office and 5 doctors. And I made a fair amount of money. I bought a house by the ocean. I had a big car. I had movie stars and Nobel Prize winners as patients. And it was just, everything was fine. I was married to a wonderful woman. I didn't have much time for religion. I was a scientist, and I also was driven to success, to monetary success, and the pleasures of the world. And finally, what happened was things got somewhat stressful. It's really hard to go ahead and run a business that size, do surgery, teach at the university, write papers, and then travel. I invented a couple of techniques on growing bone, which were patented and licensed to a company, a biotech company that sent me around the world to lecture for them. So everything was great until, I was around 45 years old when all this was happening. And all of a sudden, I began feeling the pressure, and I had a lot of stress, and I stopped sleeping well at nights, and anxiety would come into my life, and neck pain, back pain, and I didn't know where to turn to. I always thought that I could figure out everything myself. But what ended up happening was I had to turn to the Lord for the first time in my life. I wasn't even sure if God was up there or would really care about me. And so I went ahead and looked up at the dark sky and I said, Dear God, if you're up there, please help me. All I really want in life is inner peace. And what ended up happening is that the very next day, I ended up having things begin to happen. I went into a bookstore and all of a sudden a certain book popped up, and that led me to a particular speaker who wasn't particularly Catholic. Wasn't Catholic for sure, but got me on a spiritual path. And it ended up bringing me a long way. And I felt the presence of God multiple times in my life. In fact, if you ask me why I wrote the book, I had an unusual series of experiences. I was actually counting them up this morning, and I thought of 6 different times when I really came close to facing death. Right from when I was 22 years old, I was trapped in the basement where there was a house fire, and I almost couldn't get out. But almost miraculously, I was able to break through a cellar door that was loaded with snow and ice. And I was trapped in a cave with my sons in the Grand Canyon with water rising. I'm sure all these moments there was a quick, God, please help me type thing. I was in a Hurricane Camille, which is a Class 5 hurricane that hit the Mississippi Gulf Coast when I was stationed there in the Air Force. And I had to go out of the rumor came out that the hospital at which I was assigned I was on fire. And so I had to find out if that was true or not. And I went out in the Class 5 hurricane, had to crawl along the ground because winds were 175 miles an hour. It just kind of goes on and on. And God has kind of been there in the background. But so I just finally, God answered my prayers and came to me in different ways, although I had to work at it. Fortunately, I had friends as well as a wife who led me in the right direction, but I had to say yes. For instance, I ended up going on a marriage encounter, which was really helpful for our marriage as a Catholic expression, a marriage encounter. And then later on, friends asked me to go on a Cursillo Catholic weekend that brought me closer. And then probably the highlight of my quest for God came in a situation when I decided to go on a trip on the Camino de Santiago in Spain. And the Camino de Santiago I had never heard about, but a friend of mine told me his wife was going to Spain and was going to walk across Spain all by herself. And I thought, well, that's certainly unusual. So I began looking it up. And I bought a book that told about every town along the way, all the way from France to northwest Spain to the city of Santiago de Compostela, where the bones of St. James are. And I found out that there was a little town called San Juan de Ortega. And it's a town in which there was one church, a small town, population about 15 people. And that church was dedicated to a saint. And the saint was buried in the church. And somewhere around 1470, Queen Isabella of Spain was not able to get pregnant. She had one child, but she wanted a son, and for 7 years tried. And she went and prayed in the tomb of the saint. And so I thought about it, but I just certainly didn't think I was going to fly across the ocean all the way from California, where I live now, and go on this thing. But then my son, after 2 miscarriages, his wife was told they probably would not be able to ever have children. And I got the crazy idea to go and just pray to God as much as I could and ride the Camino de Santiago on a bicycle, because that counts in terms of the credentials that you get when you finish, if you do it on a bicycle or you walk certain distances. And so I went on that trip on a bicycle, and I'll never forget, probably the most impactful moment of my life. I went down in the basement of that church, and there was a tomb, and it was all dark, and my eyes started seeing the casket because there were votive candles there. So I immediately knelt down. It's almost like I felt the presence of God, and I'm looking at the casket, and on the far wall behind the casket was a large wooden cross, probably about 6 feet tall. And so at this point in my time, I wasn't very religious. I was just getting into the faith, but I knew the Our Father, and I knew the Hail Mary, and I knew the Act of Contrition. So I began saying those over and over and over again until finally, I began praying more specifically. And I said, "Dear Lord, I will do anything on this trip for you. I will suffer climbing mountains on my bicycle," because there was always the option of taking a van, because we had hired a support company that would bring us to hotels and service our bicycles along the trip. So that option of always, taking the van up the mountain was there. But I said, I'm going to suffer as much as I can. Please grant me the wish of having a grandchild. And then I can't even believe telling you now what happened, but it did happen. On that far wall, superimposed on that cross, was a small little cross, 3 feet tall, and it was blazing, and it wasn't smoking, and there's no smell. And then it divided, and that one cross divided into 3 crosses, and then the outer crosses divided, and I had looking at 5 crosses. The outer crosses divided, and I'm looking at 7 blazing crosses in this tomb. And the immediate thought was, these Spaniards are so clever. they've gone ahead and put a Disneyland type system in here where when I came through the door, I tripped something and there was a light show going on and they're projecting these crosses on the wall in front of me. So I go ahead and turn around to see the projection hole where they were projecting the crosses, and the wall behind me was totally solid and dark. And then I could not explain it. I was looking for scientific or rational reasons as to why this was happening. So I, at that point in time, wasn't wearing glasses regularly, but I thought maybe I had them on and that the votive candles were reflecting off my glasses, forming these crosses. So I go to take my glasses off, but I didn't have them on. And then I realized that this was a gift from God. And I, for about 15, 20 minutes, I would say I was in some sort of spiritual trance. But this feeling of certainty, fortitude, that I was going to have a grandchild. And the end of the story is I went home, and that my daughter-in-law, who had been pregnant twice with 2 miscarriages and again told she could probably never have a child, she got pregnant. And of course, she was concerned it'd be another miscarriage. 9 months went by. She had a baby boy. He just graduated from the Yale University, and God has been a big part of my life right along. So
Wow. Wow. I mean, I'm sure that the people watching are in awe of that story. That last one with the 7 blazing crosses, and that you saw the solid wall behind you. And then here you have this wonderful grandchild who is now in his 20s. God bless him. I'm
yeah,
sure that
thank
he's
you.
watching this podcast right now. And I say hello to his mom
Thomas,
and dad and family.
Thomas.
And how beautiful and wonderful that God worked through your prayers. There's no doubt at all that it was those prayers that you had and all the suffering that you went through too. And walking that or riding the bike on the Camino. I mean, that's incredible. So, before we take our break, is there anything else you want to share? I don't want to cut you off right in the end of that story, but please do share if there's anything else before we take a break.
Now, I came from a scientific background, and I had a lot of doubts early on. And as you can probably see from my story and maybe the expression of my face right now, I mean, I'm a total believer. I mean, God is real. God is there. God will listen to you. He listened to me because I was a sinner. That's why I wrote the book about the 7 deadly sins. God will listen to you, but you've got to do 2 things. You've got to turn to God and submit to God. God has things he wants us to do. He has rules. It isn't just go out there and do anything you want in life. You've got to get rid of those sins. You have to work on it really hard. But say to God, God, I know you're up there and I love you and I will do anything you ask me to do and accept whatever you want from me.
Amen. Amen. Well, we have a lot more to talk about because when we come back, we're going to talk about the book and we're going to talk about John's speaking events because you might wish to have him come to your parish, diocese, archdiocese organization, and just anything else that John wants to share. So we'll be back in just a couple minutes, even less than that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Anne DeSantis. I'm an author and speaker with the Catholic Speakers Organization. To learn about my work and ministry or to book an event, visit the speaking events page at annedesantis.com. Thank you. As I said, it would be a quick one. That was a quick break.
Very good.
So please, John, I would love it if you could talk about the birth of this book. Again, it's called Mortal Adhesions: A Surgeon's Battle with the 7 Deadly Sins to Find Faith. Such an exciting title, too. I mean, your own battle, like you said, and I think we're always still fighting that battle. But once we have the Lord on our sides and the sacraments of our faith, right? I mean, it's so amazing how we can do God's will. So please share about the book.
Okay. Well, I was a scientific writer, certainly not somebody that would write a book, a memoir. So I had a lot of learning to figure out how to do it. And just wanted to share what had happened in my life through all the trials that I had gone through and what finally motivated me to write the book. And you mentioned the title, Anne, Mortal Adhesions. And I thought long and hard about that. And the reason I picked that title is that mortal, of course, is what we are as mortal human beings. Uh, and we are someday going to pass and die. And what we really should be caring about is eternity. What's going to happen in eternity? And what are the things that can prevent us from experiencing the love of God and being with God forever in eternity in heaven? And it really is the things that we become addicted to. And I think everybody thinks, oh, addictions, you're talking about smoking and alcohol, all those things. And that's not really true. We can become addicted to so many things. We can become addicted to our ego. We can become addicted to fancy cars, bigger houses, and all those things. And so, then I began thinking about, well, what do all those things cause? They actually cause a separation of you from God in a sense. And then I started looking at the seven deadly sins. Pride. That was one of my biggest things. Is prideful. Always wanted to win, be first. And, certain amount of that is good, but boy, it can really cause problems in a lot of different ways. And then envy, got a nice house by the ocean by working so hard. But the guy up above me had a better view than I had. And wrath, it was the third one. And anger is really what that is. And I would find myself getting angry if somebody cut me off, in the car, and I honked my horn. That wasn't very good. And sloth, the kind of laziness, and particularly in the spiritual life. And you really have to work hard on that. You have to really commit to it. Want to learn more about your faith, read the Bible, study, read the daily readings for the day. We're very fortunate to have that. Greed would be another deadly sins, and always wanting more and not figuring what we have is enough. And then gluttony. With me, one of the things I really enjoyed, I thought, was fine wines. But, sometimes that can just lead you to maybe having one too many or spending too much money on a fine bottle of wine or overeating. And then lust. I talk about that in the book a fair amount too. I mean, that's definitely there. And in today's society, the temptations are always before you. So it's a constant battle. So overcoming the seven deadly sins, I really think, is an important part of life. And I decided that I would try to get it all down. And God blessed me with that vision in the tomb, but I realized that he really blessed me right along as I was going through these traumatic experiences, which I really wrote about in the book. And well,
Yeah.
anything else?
No, there's just so much. I mean, I'm sure that they can go to Amazon, correct, to purchase that book.
Right,
Uh,
and they can go
they
to mortaladhesions.com. It's one word, the title of the book. And what that will give them is more information. It'll actually give them pictures of the cross, not the blazing crosses, because that was a dark room, etc. But I came back an hour later and we turned on the lights and took photos and everything else of the tomb. And so those photos are all, on that website, mortaladhesions.com. And that'll take you to the Amazon link for the book so that you can learn a lot about it. So what I'm doing right now is trying to get people to know about it, because basically in the literary field, I'm a nobody. Even in the big realm of the Catholic world, I'm a nobody, but I worked really hard this past year. I was on EWTN on 3 shows. I was
Oh.
on Bookmark with Doug Keck, and 2 shows with At Home with Jim and Joy. a lot of the listeners might know Drew Mariani of Relevant Radio. I was on his
Mm.
show twice. One of them was at the National Eucharistic Congress in Indianapolis, a live interview on the floor of the convention. So I just been working very, very hard to get out there, but it's a constant battle. And
Yes, it is in our Catholic world, right? In the Catholic world of media, it's a very big world, and it's getting the word out there and helping for people within the diocese and archdiocese and religious leaders and just general parishioners, right? People who love their faith to find out about this book. I'm sure that you would like to get some speaking events. Talk about
absolutely.
that, and what would be your wish? I guess you would like to do maybe one day or weekend retreats or parish missions.
Yeah, anything is possible. I just took up a speaking engagement that'll be somewhat ongoing and probably not more than once a month, though. There's a traveling exhibit of the Shroud of Turin.
Mm.
And yeah, in my book, I talk about the Shroud of Turin. I actually went to see it in the year 2000. And I was able, again, God does amazing things. I really wanted to spend some time with the Shroud, and they have you walk by. So in about 60 seconds, you've waited in line for a couple of hours, and then 60 seconds, you walk by the Shroud and you have to leave. But a seat opened up 20 feet away from the Shroud just as I walked by it. The man got up and I was able to sit down and spend a half hour with the Shroud, only 20 feet away, looking at those blood stains and the image and everything else. And it was life changing. And so now that the Shroud is coming, and not the real one, of course, coming to San Diego, where I live, and it's going to be visiting parishes. They need speakers to talk about the Shroud. So I'm excited about that. So I'm now taking training on that. I also want to do a TED Talk. I personally did not make my book overtly Catholic because I think it can reach out to other people. I actually had a Jewish friend who he said, "I'm going to read your book." And I thought, oh, I don't know if, I didn't say that to him, but I said, I don't know if he should really read it. He's not going to maybe like it. He comes back a week later and said, "John, I can't put your book down." He says, "It's a page turner." He said, and then he came back a week later and said, "I finished your book and I've given it to my friends." And I had a Mormon fellow say that he picked it up in a bookstore, or it isn't in many bookstores, it's mainly on Amazon, but he picked it up in a bookstore. And he said it's changing his life. So that's very exciting to me. So I'm going to give a TED Talk. And I hope that's a hard thing to do to get accepted. But I want to give it on Father Spitzer's 4 levels of happiness, because if you know Father Spitzer's 4 levels of happiness, the highest level of happiness you can achieve is union with God and have a deep faith life. And most people don't realize that. They think happiness is going to come by making a lot of money and having a big car and a big house and a great job and all those other things. But there's nothing better than the highest level, which really is the spiritual level. So I keep working on all this stuff. And so thank you for mentioning that. Yes, I am for hire as far as going out and speaking. I
Yeah,
am on the West Coast.
absolutely.
So
No, I do hope and pray that you can get the word out all over the place, because what a beautiful story. I mean, and now I'm sure that when you see your grandson, it's just that confirmation that God heard that prayer, your prayer and the prayer of your kids. That that here it is. It happened. The prayers
you
came
know,
to fruition.
God is amazing. One part we haven't talked about that's pretty significant. The Camino was in the year was in the year 2001, and so I've been close to my faith for over 20 years now. But what happened was in 2008, my doctor calls and says, "I'm sorry to tell you this, but your biopsy from your prostate came back, and you have serious prostate cancer that spread beyond the gland." And all of a sudden, even with my faith, of course, my faith was early on back then compared to what it is now, but I was just beset with anxiety and frustration and, oh my gosh, am I going to die? And what treatment should I choose? And all these things. And all of a sudden, the seed was planted in my mind to go to Lourdes, France. And I did.
Mm.
And I can't say I did have a miracle there because I went there with unbelievable anxiety. And after bathing in the waters, I came out of those waters with this unbelievable feeling of peace. And even though I did go through treatment when I got home, I now knew. I mean, I could think clearly, and I now could choose the best treatment. And I've been cancer free ever since the trip to Lourdes. So I'm,
Oh,
I'm
that is an incredible story, and I'm sure that you put that in the book too.
yeah, the book kind of.
Good, good. Yeah, there's nothing like that. I myself was healed from the sacrament of the sick from a very life-threatening condition. I won't give that away because people who are watching this, you can go to my website,
Okay, there you go.
andesantis.com. You can learn about my life, faith, and mission for people your audience who don't know about me. But yeah, I have my own story, and it's kind of similar with that, with prayer and receiving that sacrament. So,
Right.
John, as we head toward the end of the program, is there any other words of wisdom that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, I would like to say wherever you are in your life in terms of your faith, maybe you have no faith or little faith, and you're not sure God's there and cares about you. God cares about you, but you have to turn to Him and you have to submit. And so that would be my recommendation: is that they just say, "Dear God, whatever you want me to do, please give me guidance. I'll do my best to follow whatever you want for me."
Wow, beautiful advice. And thank you so much. Please do, let's keep in touch. Maybe you can come back again, next book or whenever, just to keep us
Working on that too.
updated on your wonderful ministry. Again, that website is mortaladhesions.com. Is there any other either call to action for the audience or website or social media or anything you want to share with them?
Well, I would say find out about the Shroud of Turin if you're not familiar with it right now, because so many people say, "Oh, that was disproven in the carbon dating testing." No, that's not true, because the carbon dating testing has actually been shown not to be a really good test in that situation because of where they did the test. So find out about it. That is one thing that'll help deepen your faith.
Amen. Amen. Dr. John Sottosanti, thank you so much for being a guest on Journeys in Faith. God bless you. And for all those of you who are watching this program, we are the first and third Friday of every month at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the Anne DeSantis YouTube channel and also on Facebook at Journeys in Faith with Anne DeSantis. See you next time. God bless.